This is Utah Hustlers, a podcast on how to build your business to $10,000 a month. My name is Skylar Bytendorp. I'm an entrepreneur, and it's my mission to give you the shortest path to success possible. On this show, we have 2 episodes a week. The first, we talk with highly successful business owners that are making $10K and often far more a month in revenue. We talk with them on one specific part of business that enabled them to reach the level of success they have. The second, I go over the personal development that will fast track your success as a person and a business owner. Over the 4 weeks we have each month, I rotate through mind, body, money, and people. My definition of success is having all 4 of those areas in order. If I'm accelerating in them, if I'm maintaining all 4 of those areas of my life, I am successful. And today we're talking with Tanner Williams about something incredibly important when it comes to moving your business forward. If you're not at that 10 grand a month yet, this might be why. This is a non-negotiable for business owners, and it's keeping track of your numbers. But the question is, what numbers do we track and how do we track them? Because if at any point we want to scale our business or sell our business or make any big moves, we need to know our numbers. If we don't know our numbers, we're not equipped with the information we need to make decisions as the business owner. How are we supposed to know if we can buy that expensive piece of equipment, or if we can drop $1,000 in marketing, or if we can hire another employee? All these decisions are easy to make when we have data. Tanner goes over what numbers specifically we should be keeping track of, where to track those numbers, and ways to gamify the number tracking process and the information we get. All that and more coming up on this episode with Tanner Williams.
My name is Tanner Williams. I am the Vice President of Sales at Ambia Solar. I've been doing that for 3 years now. We named it Active Solar. It wasn't Active, but a lot of the main owners of Active invested into Active Solar as well. So I'm a co-founder at Ambia. I'm Vice President of Sales, and so a little bit more like the high risk, high reward, but I personally love that. It fuels me. I could never do a 9 to 5, get paid a salary.
Yeah. So when someone has a business, at least when I started, I didn't keep track of numbers, like how long I was working, how many doors I knocked on or flyers I left out, or how much money I made, what my expenses were. I didn't keep track of any of that, but it's important to do that. You want to explain to everybody why it's important to keep track of your numbers?
Yeah, I think the first thing it does is it lowers your anxiety levels. When you know what's going on within your business as far as numbers go, you can actually make decisions that are more calculated and not just emotional. And I think once you can take out a lot of the emotion, a business just becomes kind of like a science. It's there's a formula for successful businesses. And I think there's a lot of people in life who have figured that out. And that's why they get lucky multiple times. Every single time their businesses are winning. But it's not necessarily because they're lucky. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, I guess. So they're prepared. They know how to run a successful business. They know how to do it to the blueprint, I guess, or the algorithm, or whatever you want to call it. And I think a lot of it has to do with how well they track their numbers, whatever their lead count is, whatever their conversion ratios are, their expenses, their monthly revenue, whatever it needs to be. They know exactly what it needs to be, and they can actually make educated decisions that are not fueled by the emotion of what do I do right now to make my business grow, right? So lowers your anxiety, it allows you to make good decisions, not just emotional ones. And I think that's a key for success in business.
Yeah. Success is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah.
Because when we make decisions in business, it's hard to make a decision without information. And information makes any decision in life a lot easier, right? If you don't know if you want to marry the girl or not, well, the more information you can either write down or get from them while you're dating, it makes decisions like that easier. So that's why it's why the numbers is just data, and the data tells you kind of what you can do and what you can't do.
Exactly.
So let's start with the basics. What's the bare minimum people should be keeping track of?
Yeah. For context, I'm mainly in sales, right? You have to know how many leads am I trying to set up. There's a bunch of ways to get leads. You can reach out to people you know. You can reach out to people you don't know. You can do paid leads. You can do word of mouth. You can do, there's mainly 4 different ways that Alex Hormozy talks about for how many leads you can get. You have to track, how much effort am I putting out? And then how are those leads converting to an actual opportunity to make a sale? And then how many sales am I making? And then how many of those sales are actually reaching fulfillment, or am I actually getting paid on? Track your revenues, and then the expense guys come in and they track their expenses, and then everything gets worked out.
And then where do you keep track of those numbers? Do you have
we have CRMs that we track our data in. So, we use things in the solar industry, we use Enterflow or Enzy. like on our 2 main platforms that we track everything with. And so that's where we're able to track, for me specifically, how many doors knocked today, how many decision makers did we talk with, how many actually sat down or, set up a consultation, how many sat down for that consultation. Like we can track all those numbers. Then I can go to my guys, and if they're ever confused on maybe their performance, or they had a really good month or they had a really poor month, I can actually pinpoint, well, hey, here are the differences that made this month really good or made this month not so great, and here are things we can change. Right. And actually make progress. So that's where we track them.
Yeah. We had someone on about a month ago, talked about CRMs and like why it's so important in like building customer relationships.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like CRM is not just for that, but it's also for like, you can keep track of your expenses. You can keep track of your profits. You can keep track of like everything, right? That's like how you build people too. So
yeah,
CRM, if you don't have a CRM, people get a CRM.
Gotta have a CRM.
Yeah. So how often do you review your numbers and put them in?
For me as a manager overseeing 100 and 200 reps at a time, we look at them weekly at least, right? Sometimes daily. Like when I was out in the field, I was reviewing my personal numbers every single day. So if you're a small business and you're not 10,000 a month yet, you should be reviewing them as much as possible. It's almost like keeping score. You got to be keeping score with where you're at. And so I don't think there's ever too much you can do unless you are just getting analysis paralysis, right? But as long as if you can always know your numbers and what you're adjusting, like there's no wrong answer, I don't think there, but frequently. You should be reviewing them frequently.
Yeah. I heard Alex Hormozy talk a lot about looking at your bank account daily.
Yeah.
Is that something you do?
I'm not probably a daily guy. I'm at least a weekly. Just yesterday, I was looking at with my wife and kind of looking at this quarter versus last quarter and like the progress that we've made in there. And so looking at it frequently, yeah, is definitely important.
Right. So probably, I mean, I don't look at it every day either, but once a week at a minimum. That's what I do. And I think that's probably what everybody should do.
Yeah.
But especially when you're first starting, you got to know where your money's going out. You got to know if you have expenses that you don't know about or subscriptions that were still on that you thought you canceled but didn't, right?
Yeah. I did a deep dive with my wife probably like a year ago, and we went through and canceled out like 15 subscriptions that we were no longer even using. I couldn't even remember one of them. It was kind of embarrassing, but I was like, yeah, dang, that's crazy. All these subscriptions that at one point we signed up for, cut them out. And I was like, there you go. And I was like, I wonder what I could cut out in my business. And so I did that same practice with our guys, and whether it was just wasting time on certain things or whatever, but getting rid of the stuff that is just bogging you down was also good.
Especially because like people starting, they don't have a lot of revenue coming in maybe, or they're still building their business, right? So like every dollar matters. If you're spending $100 on subscriptions that you don't even use, or maybe some of them do the same thing, like go in and look at that, cut out what you don't need. So let's start with time. Like how do you keep track of the time that you spend on the business or that you spend in sales or bringing in revenue?
I track my time in like the office, for example. It's pretty easy to track like days per week spent in the office and how many hours per day did I spend in the office. And at this point in my career, I'm there way too much. But when I was first getting started, I just tracked how many hours per day. I was in full-time school. I was a newlywed. I'm a very social guy. Like I have the most FOMO that you'll probably ever, like I always wanted to be doing the things that other people were doing. So I just had to get granular with it. And I just tracked how many hours per day. And then each week I could look at it with my daily planning and say, all right, I spent 8 hours in the office this week. My results were that I didn't sign a single recruit. So that makes sense. I only spent 8 hours in the office, right? So you can kind of correlate those two things.
Yeah. Because if you look at that you're spending 100 hours a week or whatever on your business, but you got to like look at, okay, how much I'm making? What's my ROI on the time I'm spending? Yeah. So something I found with my time is like, has to do with like the quality time. That's like where the results come from. Because like I'll be sitting at my desk editing, and then I get a notification on Instagram, and then I go look at the message, and then I exit the message, and then here's this interesting reel that just came up, and then it just sucks me in or something like that. Right. So it doesn't matter like how much time exactly that we spend. It's like the quality of the time.
I actually did this thing, and I still do it, especially when I would find that my day maybe didn't have enough stuff to keep me busy for like 8 hours. So I just did time blocking where I would work really hard on something. And I did this in school. I do it now in my business, work really hard on one specific thing for like 25 minutes. And then I gave myself like a 5-minute break. That's when I would check my phone, or that's when I would go get a water. And, if I go to the break room to get a water really fast and I see an employee, like I talk to him for a second, you know what I mean? So that was my designated time. And then that 5 minutes went off and I was back to do another 25-minute interval. And those intervals, I think, allowed me to be more productive in 25 minutes than I otherwise would have been in maybe 2 hours. But it also gave my brain a little refresh with that 5-minute break. So I found that to be very helpful with me and people that have like maybe ADHD or something, that their brain's going everywhere.
Which is like everyone now, the brain.
Seriously. Being able to focus on one task for like a short amount of time though, it made a huge difference.
Yeah. So keep track of your time. Let's see. Let's talk about people that you reach out to. So like contacting people and getting leads. Is that something you keep track of?
Yeah. And we have like a knocking software where we can literally go through and see every single home that we've knocked, and we can actually track the outcome of each interaction as well. And so you have to have something like that.
Which I think
within your business.
CRMs do that too.
Yeah, CRMs do the exact same thing. You have to have somewhere though where you can track how did the conversation go, what was the outcome, and then what's really cool is that, and what most people I feel like don't do, is that those people that weren't ready right away, like in solar, we talk about all the time, like timing is everything. Because solar makes sense. It's an easy product to sell as long as you can actually get in front of people. And that's the hardest part, is just getting in front of people when they have ample time to actually hear you out. And so people that weren't ready 2 weeks ago, I could knock their door today, and all of a sudden I caught them in a different mood. I caught them in a different time, and now they're interested. Because we sell people all the time. They're like, oh yeah, you're like the 10th solar guy that's came by my door. Well, what was the difference between all 10? Most likely it was just that we caught them at a better time. Timing, I think, is everything. So being able to track those things, then you can go back to old customers. They're free leads that you've already talked to. You already have some familiarity with them as well. But if you haven't tracked them, you'll never be able to find them again.
So not everyone here's knocking doors. Some are, but some are maybe reaching out on social media. Some are making phone calls. Some are going to networking events. So really that applies to all that. You know, keep track of who you're talking to, what time, how you contacted them, maybe even what they do or, you know, whatnot. So that way you can figure out, you can look at, hey, here's where the most customers are coming in from, spend more time and dollars into this area. Maybe it's networking events, maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's TikTok, maybe it is knocking doors. Yeah,
if you have a bunch of different ways to go find people and then you track all your numbers, you can then find exactly which one is the best, which one produces the most return on time invested, and then boom, you're good.
Because there's a lot of places to get customers.
It's unlimited.
Yeah, you want to know where does the grass grow greenest when you water it, right?
Exactly. Well, even it's just funny, like I talk to a lot of people about funnels, and to your point of numbers, like they know if I spend $10,000 of advertising on YouTube or whatever else, I know exactly how much revenue I should gain just because of how many times I've done it. And like, that's the key of numbers. It's like you can know whatever my inputs are, there's a calculated way to know what my output should be because of how much money I put in or how much time I put in or whatever else. It's like just even getting like an email list or all these different things that you can then track. You can go back and hit those customers up again. And sometimes it'll take 7 interactions before they actually convert into a customer, but then you can track all those things. And anyway, that's a rabbit hole on its own. But
you're completely right. Because when you know the numbers, you have the data, you know where to put more dollars, more time. Right. Because and then you can say, hey, anytime I put $100 into here, 1,000 comes out.
Exactly.
Because then that's the point of like when you can scale.
Right.
Like if you know your numbers, you can scale your business because you know exactly where to put your money, where to put your time.
Yeah.
So, right. And I think like with numbers, like I love the word gamify it.
Yeah.
Right. Because like if you can have fun with it, do it. But like kind of make it a game. Like, all right, how many leads can I get this month or this day?
Right.
And, you know, where can my bottom line be by next month? Right. So I think gamifying business is what everybody should do.
Yeah. It makes it way more fun.
Yeah. Anything that's tracked is almost by default improved. If you're trying to break a habit and you put a chart on your wall of the days that you do it, you're going to be more likely to improve it just because you're tracking it.
Yeah, just because you have to be cognizant of it.
Out of sight, out of mind kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, then if you take it a step further, if you track it and then you report it, it makes an even bigger difference, right? If you go and track it and it's personal, but then you have to go and report that number, that makes an even bigger difference. So if you have even somebody that can hold you accountable to whatever it is, that extra step of accountability and tracking and then reporting those numbers to that person, huge difference as well.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't have a friend or someone close that is also building a business, like go find one, keep each other accountable.
Yeah.
You know, like report those numbers.
Yeah.
And
every single week on Mondays, we have a meeting with all the main leaders of the organization. And like right now we're in recruiting mode where we're building teams and things like that. We go over our numbers from the last week every single time. And we all have to go and tell what our numbers are and what our performance was last week. And if I'm not the number one spot, like I'm ticked. And so knowing that I have to go and report this to all my guys and like all the main leaders of the company every single week makes me work harder throughout the week because I'm like, I have to go report this next week. And my name's on the line every single weekend. If I'm not number one, then I'm ticked about it. And so it's fun. Gamifying, reporting it, all that fun stuff.
Reporting's huge. I love that you said that. Okay, profit and loss. You want to talk about that for a little bit? Like what's the profit and loss and how do we keep track of that? What does that look like?
Yeah, P&L statements, profit and loss, like every year you can, every quarter, every month, every day, you can go back and say, what are we spending? And then what is our actual revenue? And then, what's our profits? Because it's, revenue minus expenses is your profit. And then revenue minus expenses, if it's negative, that's your loss. And so being able to go and track that, you can see, like when we talked about subscriptions, like, are we paying too much in certain areas to where all of our profit is being eaten up by our expenses? And then you can shift or modify it? And can we save some money here so we can actually profit? Like I remember it was like 2 or 3 years ago, I hired an agency to help me with recruiting. They were doing like online leads for me essentially. 3 months, 4 months later, I'm looking at the numbers, and the amount that it was costing me per lead was surpassing how much those actual leads were converting into revenue. And so I was losing money. So like, okay, well maybe I need to change this or adjust it or whatever else. And I was able to see it and then make the change. So that's like a little example, I guess.
Yeah. So go over that monthly, look at your expenses. You're going to minus that from the total revenue, the gross revenue that come in, which will give you your net profit. And that's essentially what you make, right?
Yeah. It's funny on Instagram and stuff, you'll see all these gurus or whatever. They'll talk about, oh yeah, we did like $1 million this month. You're like, sweet. And then like sometimes you look under the hood, it's like, but your expenses were $950,000. So $1 million business is actually like 50,000. You know what I'm talking about? And so we trick ourselves, I think, a lot of times with revenue versus, there's certain industries that I can think of where revenue is a big thing that they push. But like how much of that is actually profit?
Right.
Don't fall into that trap either.
Right.
You're like, oh, our revenue's huge. Yeah, but your expenses are bigger. So you're actually negative this month.
Right.
You don't want to do that.
What other numbers do you keep track of?
Everything that could be an input, I think are really important numbers to track. And when I say inputs, it's like the effort put into your business. I think those are huge. They can actually paint a bigger picture than your outputs, because some months you might just get lucky with an output or you might get unlucky with an output. But I really like to look at business as a roller coaster. But overall, I know that like the law of averages will average it out. And like one day might be terrible, but one day might be phenomenally great. And I can't judge my business based on either one of those days. I can only track it based on like the controllables or my inputs. So I really try to track my controllables or my inputs rather than even tracking my outputs sometimes, because the more emphasis I put on my inputs, the outputs just take care of themselves. I feel like way too many people only track the outputs. And so anything that could be something that goes into your business to make your outputs like a calculated amount, I would say track those religiously.
Religiously. That's the thing. When you close someone and the invoice is sent out and maybe people have started service already, like you got to keep track of who's actually paid you and not paid you.
Right. That's a huge one. I feel like a lot of people just track their sales, and like every industry is a little bit different, but some sales are transactional immediately, and like you give them a product and they give you money and it's right then. A lot of sales, there's a transaction, like an agreement, whether it's a signed document or a verbal confirmation or whatever, and like they'll count that as a sale, but then it takes maybe a month for fulfillment. Like in solar, for example, it takes 2 to 3 months sometimes for the fulfillment of that contract to actually happen. And way too many people get caught up in just the sales number. They don't look at the install number. And that's a huge deterioration from their actual revenues and things like that. And really their success overall, because they can maybe go sell 30 accounts in a month, but only get 2 installed. That's a terrible month, right? Might as well have only sold 2.
Right.
And so, yeah, to your point, tracking sales, but actually funded or fulfilled or whatever the project needs to be to where you actually get paid.
Yeah, exactly. Because hopefully people are helping more and more people every single month. Right. And you're getting busier and busier and you got more and more things to do. And so it's good to track that, and you just keep track of like the money that actually comes in from people that owe you money, because you'll forget.
You definitely will.
Yeah, because there's just so many people that you're helping.
Especially with volume. You'll slip under the cracks for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so time spent, where you're getting your leads, how you're getting them, your expenses, your income, who's been paying you, and then review your profit and loss at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything?
The only thing that came to mind actually, it's kind of another form of lead generation, but is referrals. Like once you've actually made money and you have a customer, using them to get more customers. I mean, that's really how businesses thrive, is when you can create more customers out of just one customer. So I would find a way to track and gamify that too, because we did a competition 1 month based off of referrals and who could get the most referrals. And all of a sudden, crazy, referrals boosted, right? But that's one of your easiest customers to get. It's the easiest and usually the lowest cost of like acquisition of that lead. Anyway, so I would track that. A lot of times people don't really track referrals in their lead generation because they don't see it as lead generation. They see it as follow-up, but it's just another lead. Like you have to look at all the avenues you can get leads, and referrals is one of the biggest ones that if you capitalize on it, you could 2x your business just by leads. If you don't capitalize on it, you're going to be having to find new customers over and over and over again. So
yeah, exactly. You don't really have to sell them on it because the neighbor has basically already sold what they're doing for you, because they're obviously going to talk about what it is to work with you, what the product is. And it's probably such an easy sell when it's a referral.
It's so easy. I remember like the average sale time in solar is probably 45 minutes to like an hour and a half. Every time I've got a referral, it's been well under like 30 minutes, like probably 20 minutes, 30 minutes maximum. Like you just go in, the trust's already there, you're boom, 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 done. Especially like in a market where there's already good kind of consumer knowledge on the product. Now it's just, they trust you, they like you, you helped out their neighbor, you helped out their friend, boom, let's do it. Yeah. So yeah, they're easy sales. And I don't feel like enough people actually track their efforts to go get referrals. But if you do start doing that, you'll notice, oh, I don't even try. I think referrals really are one of the things where like ask and you shall receive. But most people don't track how many times they ask. So
Do you ever give a referral discount?
it's just like the principle of like, I help you, you help me. Like people like that. A lot of times people, I feel like, don't enjoy me giving you a discount for nothing. Like they want to feel like there's something exchanged in that moment. And so if I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Hey, I'll give you a referral bonus if you give me referrals. Like that's a very easy thing. They're probably going to give you referrals anyways, but now that you give them this little bonus, it's like you'll get what would have been maybe one referral, maybe that turns into 10. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well,
Incentivizing it.
when it comes to discounts and doing promotions or things like that, I think that's like a whole like separate thing that you got to keep track of. Like if you run a promotion for your business where it's $100 off your service, do your numbers go up when you do a specific promotion like that?
Yeah.
So that's another thing that people need to keep track of is when you do a referral discount or things like that, like what percentage goes up when you do things like that?
Right. Yeah, I need to track my own stat on that actually. But like I would usually do a $500 discount or a $500 referral bonus to someone who would give me a referral. And some people are like, oh, that's low. Or some people are like, oh, that seems really high. For me, it was just, well, what's my time worth that I get to save by just getting a referral? And yeah, that's how I calculated it. I was like, wait, I'll give somebody $500 all day because that just saved me $500 of the time that I would have had to spend, which, and then it's like, now it's calculated and it's another number that that's what it's worth to me. Right. So I don't really budge on my referral discount because I know what it's worth and boom, it works out. So anyway.
Yeah, I think everybody should have a referral discount because you're right. Like you don't have to spend time calling anyone, knocking on doors. Like they basically sell the thing for you. So have a referral discount because it incentivizes your customers. And so you're going to get more of that. You don't have to do as much work for it. So it is worth something.
Oh, absolutely.
Any other numbers that people should be keeping track of in their business?
I'm sure there are. I feel like those are the things that have made the biggest difference for me. Tracking those ones.
And it sounds like a lot, but if people get a good CRM, a lot of this can be automated, or you can have your CRM prompt you every day, like, hey, log this in, and just get in the habit of keeping track of your numbers and logging that stuff in. Because if you ever were to sell your business, you need to know your numbers. If you ever need to hire an employee, you need to look at your numbers so you can decide whether you can afford it or not, things like that. So,
and the first thing that anybody who is going to acquire your business is going to want to ask for is your books.
Exactly.
And if you don't have any books to show them, you don't have any numbers, there's no history. I mean, at the end of the day, the reason we study history, in my opinion, is so we can learn from it and not repeat the bad and replicate the good, right? And if you don't have a business history, which is pretty much just numbers, then you can't replicate the good and you can't fix the bad. So
exactly. Any last advice for all the Utah hustlers out here building their business 10 grand a month?
Like I said, I think if you track your numbers, you can really gamify it. I'll go specific with this for a second, but like in door knocking, in pest control and in solar, I've been able to find out like exactly how many doors I need to usually knock per day to get my desired result. So for example, in pest control, I usually need to knock on like 20 doors to get a sale. Or like specifically with decision makers, I was like, I need to talk to 5 decision makers to get 1 sale. So now I'm tracking decision makers and I'm not even tracking doors. So that was like the progression of my tracking my numbers. Because like I said, business is like a roller coaster. And if you can stay in the middle, you're going to be so much better. But what allows me to stay in the middle is knowing my numbers so I know, hey, this is exactly what I have to do to reach my desired outcome. You're not going to do that unless you track it. So for me, it was lucky because I had it on my app where I would knock doors. It would tell me every single day, how many doors I knocked, what time was my first knock, what time was my last knock. Like it was very easy to stay accountable. And then when I moved into solar, we had to kind of create some of those new standards and we had to create some of those new metrics to measure because it was a different product, different sales process. But the process stayed the same where I tracked, my efforts in my business. I tracked the yeses and the nos I got. And I was able to get to the point where I knew exactly how much work I had to do every single day to reach my outcome. And then just calculated. Now business is really fun. I don't wake up stressed like, oh, are we going to make it today? Like I know we will because I know what it takes. And am I willing to pay that price? Yes, of course. If I'm not willing to pay that price, then I'm not going to do that business anymore. For all the new guys that are getting into business, learn your numbers so that you can then create such a calculated process that you're going to win. And if you stay in a business long enough, it's absurd to think that if you stick with something long enough that you'll fail. If you stick with something long enough, like you'll usually be okay. Don't tie yourself to a sinking ship, obviously, but have some patience. You should be good.
Yeah, there's 2 people, the people that win and the people that just give up.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't give up, in my opinion, you will win.
For sure.
And you can accelerate that winning by hiring mentors, by learning from other people, listening to podcasts to teach you how to win faster. And something that just came to my mind while you're talking about that is when you keep track of your numbers and know where your business is at and you have a pulse on your business, there's a lot of confidence that comes with that too.
Oh, yeah.
Especially like as a business owner. And so some people need that confidence that like, hey, they're winning. We're making progress every month. So that way you can keep going. You say, hey, this month I helped 4 people. Next month, as long as you help 5 people, like you're progressing, right? And so it builds a confidence. Sometimes it feels like we're spinning on tires when we're starting a business and we don't know exactly what we're doing yet. But keeping track of the numbers helps you realize that you're not spinning your tires, that you're actually progressing and moving forward.
Absolutely.
If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way they can do that?
My phone number is, I'm just kidding. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram handle is thetanner.williams. Pretty easy. You can follow me, DM me, whatever. I'm happy to connect. My last thing, I guess, for anybody would be, I think there's this weird taboo almost about sales sometimes. And like most business owners and entrepreneurs know that, hey, you have to have sales, but some don't. Like some really don't think that you have to have sales in order to do it. They're like, oh yeah, I'm going to work on my friends and family and referrals and things like that, and word of mouth and advertising. Like hire someone who's good at sales. I would always say that to any entrepreneur. If you can hire someone who's good at sales, and we are in Utah, which is the mecca of good salespeople. There are so many people that can sell well. Hire 1 or 2 of them to help promote your sales. That'll be one of the best business decisions you can make as well. I think a lot of people kind of like steer away from that because like, oh, we don't want to be a sales company. You don't have to be a sales company, but every business lives and dies off sales. Like you have to have it. But having an actual sales department is very different than having a marketing department, in my opinion. So,
I agree.
Anyway, that'd be my other thing that I would always tell people. I'm happy to help teach them how to sell as well. Like that's one of my biggest things that I like about my job is that now I sell people on selling. I teach people how to sell. And that's been super gratifying and fun. So yeah, they're for sure reach out. My mother-in-law and her brother, they own a business. The company's called Fresh Home. My mother-in-law's brother, I guess my wife's uncle, he owns it. They do those conventions. Like they were at Pinner's conference like a couple weeks ago. And she was asking me some tips on like, how could I sell a little bit better? And I gave her one line. I was like, just do this option close instead of asking him, hey, like, do you want it? Like, give him an option close at the end to make the decision easier for her. And she went back that next day and she outsold her brother, who's like the owner of the company, and the other salesperson. Like their combined sales, my mother-in-law sold more than both of them combined. And she was like, it worked. And I was like, oh, that's so gratifying to see. Like you can apply it to anything. So yeah, if people want to reach out just for sales tips, I'm happy to give them to those as well. So
Tanner, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.